Grace, I just sent you the link.
All right. Wait, no, it's something. I still didn't get it.
Okay.
My phone just got it. Come on, computer. That's how it's working. All right.
You got it?
Yeah. That took a minute. All right, good to go.
You said we're good to go?
Yep,
You said yes?
yes. I'm sorry.
Okay. It was just kind of echoing, I guess, on my end.
Making sure we have everybody.
Yeah, we're just waiting on a few more people to come over.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And as soon as Olivia lets me have privileges, I will go ahead and put the agenda up on the screen.
Dr. Claudia can share. You should have privileges now. Is Glenn, does he have issues with his audio? I see he had 2 came in for Glenn.
Yeah, I use my phone for audio, and then because the screen's bigger on my computer, I can watch it on my computer. So I use my phone to be able to talk, and the
No
computer
worries.
to watch it. Yeah, sorry.
No problem. I just seen that you had came twice.
Yeah, that's until until the state can provide me with the right equipment, I'm gonna have to be logged in twice.
No problem. Miss Darby, you
All
are
right.
good to go.
Thank you. All right. A meeting of the Louisiana State Board of Medical Examiners Occupational Therapy Advisory Committee pursuant to lawful notice is duly convened and called to order at 10:04 Friday, September 15th, 2023 via Zoom virtual video. Please note any comments by the public are welcome and can be emailed to publiccomment@lsbme.la.gov. Dr. Van, please confirm that you have verified the identity of all the tele and video conference participants.
Yes, we have.
Thank you. Is the sound clear and audible to the public and those on tele and video conference?
Yes.
Okay. All additions to the executive or public agenda must be made presently, as we'll no longer make additions to the agenda after the close of the public session. Just quickly to review the mission of the Occupational Therapy Advisory Committee is ultimately to protect the public, that is the consumers of occupational therapy, by regulating competent practice and upholding the standards set forth by the governing rules and regulations. Just going to make sure that we have all members today. I'm Darby Philibert, the chair. We have Ingrid Frank, vice chair, Brenda Martin, Kelly Brandon, Carolyn Murphy, Raylena Crooks, Kimberly Solari, Amy LaRiviere, and Glenn Wallace. Other participants include Dr. Vincent Collada, Olivia Pilong, Tracy Morrow, Sandra Hawkins, and Phyllis Johnson. So anyone else that I haven't mentioned?
Patricia Wilton, Executive Counsel for the board, hanging out over here.
Oh, I'm sorry, Patricia.
That's okay. It's better if nobody needs to call my name anyway.
I kept scrolling and scrolling, but I didn't get to the end. I'm sorry. And Dr. Van, do we have any guests today?
Not at this time.
Okay, Ingrid, can you please confirm that we have a quorum?
Yes, we do have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. And all members present today.
Yes.
Okay, just to let y'all know, on the cloud share, there are 2 additional documents that you may not have seen. My apologies, they were added around 9:40, but we can refer back to those, and Ingrid will have one of them on the screen share. So for old business, we would like everyone to look at the minutes from the meeting on August 4th. And if someone would like to make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
I move to accept the minutes. This is Brenda.
Okay, thank you. Second, this is Kelly. Okay. All in favor? Please say aye.
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 Thank you. Anyone opposed?
Aye.
And do we have any public comment based on the minutes?
No public comments.
Okay, thank you. So the minutes have been approved. Okay. Dr. Van, I'm going to ask you just quickly before we get into the rules, would you like to go into executive session? Because I see that we have agenda items.
Probably best to do executive session at the end. We'll take it all if they want to do it that way. If you don't, it's up to you. You can go in executive session.
Okay, can you just tell me approximately how much time you think might be needed, just to make sure that we have?
Darby, the licensure matter is going to be deferred. I think Ms. Phyllis is still working on with that one person. Phyllis, if you want to comment, I think it'll be probably at the next meeting.
Yeah, it was really an issue of 2 questions, but since we had erroneous information, it's really an issue of just 1 question. And just concerning if some CEUs are acceptable. That's really what it's addressing.
Okay, so
We may not have to bring it to you. We'll just have to resolve it. And if we have it to bring it to you, we'll bring it at the next meeting.
okay, so we're just going to defer that for now.
Right.
Okay, great. Thank you for that clarification. Okay, so the first items on the rules and regulations would be to vote on the telehealth edits. This isn't a separate document. I'm not sure, Dr. Van, if you would like for us to pull it up or not.
I've got it. Hang on a second.
Okay, the committee was sent the telehealth edit, and y'all are gonna have to let me know if you want to read over them, review them, or if you feel like y'all are okay with them to make a motion for approval.
Can everybody read them?
Yes.
I had I guess I missed out on the conversation for I guess if you guys talked about this last time, but I had a few thoughts after I read over it. Are we going to provide definitions for synchronous and asynchronous in another place in our like in the area where we're going to provide all of our definitions?
That's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean,
because
those,
it's defined in, excuse me, those two terms are defined, like whenever I've read other things like this, and it's really important that clear definitions of each is laid out.
yeah, so we didn't talk about that specifically, Glenn, and thank you for bringing that up. We will actually on today's agenda, if we get to it, under F, there is a plan for the definitions, and basically Ingrid and I's thought through the whole thing is that we were going to go through and italicize the words and then come up with a list. So
Okay.
I would suggest, like, I'll write this down, but anytime y'all feel like there is a word that we need to define, what we've been doing is sort of italicizing it in our draft just to make sure that we catch it. And like that, you know, we need a clear cut definition for that. And then when we do definitions, we'll have to agree and vote on what the definition is. So,
Okay.
that language, just so you know, came from the Telehealth Access Act. So that
Yeah.
was not, we didn't make up that thing. We just wanted
No.
to
And I'm aware of, like, I've read through that act before because I was, before the pandemic, I was working at Our Lady of the Lake, and I was interested in trying to do something with like OT and telehealth. So I was I'm kind of familiar. I haven't done telehealth, but I'm very interested in like how OT could provide it. So I tried to make myself familiar with it previously. Another thing is when you go to, I guess we'll call it number 4, on this list, number 4, letter B, the OTP will be responsible for verifying the physical location of the patient for purposes of emergency contact and licensing requirements. I think there needs to be, I understand that we could say that they need to verify that, but that could be a potential, I don't know, if it's solely the responsible for that person and it's not automatically provided within like the software that they're using when they talk with this other person about it, it feels like some of these things are going to be, could potentially be hard to verify. Like if you're on your end of the FaceTime video and you say, like, how do you verify that? You say, hey, are you located in Baton Rouge? And they say, yeah. Like, I mean, there needs to be, I think that could be a potentially sticky situation when, you know what I mean?
So basically the conversation that occurred and the reason that we put this, and I think it's kind of insinuated in another part of this as well, is that we wanted a physical location for 2 reasons. Basically to say, like, you know, can you give me the address where you are? One, in case there's an emergency. So say they're doing something and there's a call and no one else is home, but also to make sure that they're in Louisiana, because we would not be able to provide the telehealth service if they're not in our state.
Right. I think that's fine. It might just need to be, that could be good, or it could be just.
Well, it's basically exactly as you said, you're going to ask. It's a good faith effort by the OT to ascertain where they are. If you're lied to, you cannot help it. If somebody.
Maybe if we could put those words in there, like a good faith effort. I like that.
Well, all of the rules are really like,
no, I know. I'm just,
you know.
You're trying to eliminate as much subjectivity as possible. So if you put the word verify, and then it becomes a dispute down the road as to whether or not someone did or did not properly verify, that's when the good faith comes into it. It's more, but I think it's better to leave it adjectivized.
Okay. Another, and then one smaller piece is that number 4, letter E.
Okay, wait, before that, hold that. Dr. Mann, do you have a question about that?
Well,
okay, sorry.
For
That's okay.
purposes of, yes, for purposes of everybody's understanding, remember that the domicile of the patient determines the need for the license. So, for example, if the domicile of the patient is in Mississippi and you're doing telehealth on that patient, it's not Louisiana's license that's going to be a problem. It's the fact that you either do or do not have a Mississippi license.
Correct.
But what if
Likewise,
this?
go ahead. I'm sorry. No, ask your
I was gonna
question, please.
What if this person, like their home, they are domiciled in Mississippi, you're a Louisiana therapist, but that they are visiting their, you know, their son or their daughter in Louisiana, like they live in, we live, I'm up here close to the border, Louisiana, Mississippi border. So let's say they're domiciled in Centerville, Mississippi, but that they're here visiting, they're here in Jackson visiting family, and they want to receive telehealth while they're here visiting their daughter. That can't be, you know what I mean? Like, so then, so what then?
All
I know
right.
that's a
So
kind of a
first of all,
specific situation, but
you would need a Mississippi license to have been providing that care in Mississippi for that patient. Now, if they're like we traditionally have issues of patients take vacations. I can't tell you
Right.
the number of times in 46 years patients would call me, I'm on vacation in Florida, I have a yeast infection, Dr. Claudia, yeah, I'll call in something. That's not a problem. They're
Okay.
domiciled in Mississippi. So even if you've been treating them in Mississippi, you have to have a Mississippi license. Okay.
Okay.
Likewise, if they come over here and move to Louisiana, okay, or
Okay.
yes, they're here in Louisiana and you want to do it for them in your office, what happens is, where's the order for it coming from? Is the physician licensed in Louisiana? Because we're saying in our rules that the physician needs to be licensed in Louisiana. That gives you the order to perform the work. So again, if they're domiciled in Mississippi, you're going to need a physician's order to do the work. And will that be a Mississippi licensee or a Louisiana licensee? For you, it should be a Louisiana licensee at this particular time, unless we change as we do this, we can say that the order for the work needs to be done. And as we have to address this in these rules to make sure we say the license of the physician ordering should be, because they don't, should be and we have to decide that, is it best to be in the state of the licensee or the state of the patient? Because
And
remember,
then
you guys have to put an order from a physician.
and then the thing that's going to make this a little bit more complicated is once the compact is put into place, like, I guess it still matters. Like, it still would be based, like I would be licensed in Louisiana, but then I guess I would have access to states that comply within our, you know, that are within the compact agreement. So is the compact?
No, you would have to have,
No,
you'd have to
yeah.
have a compact permission, which is
Okay.
a license, which is equivalent to a license, is the law, what law
Okay.
says, in that state. You just can't
Right.
do it. You
Right.
have to go through
Okay.
the compact process, get the compact permission, which is a license in that new state, and pay for that. Now,
Okay.
when you start doing the telemedicine OT services in that state, they may have a rule that says you have to have an order from a physician to do so. So you're going to practice under their rules when you practice over there.
As long as we all had, as long as it's all clear, it's fine. I just think that it's just going to be, all of that needs to be laid out, because I could see how there could be ambitious people that want to take advantage of this technology. And so in order for them to not just do something that would be illegal or not allowed, or however those are different, you know, and they're not realizing that they're doing so because they're just trying to help people do something good and maybe start a new business or do something new, then we would just need to be clear that all of that just needs to be clear. And some of it just seems like, while all of this that we have on these papers is clear, it might not, I feel like it's incomplete. And I don't really have a suggestion as to how to make it complete at this time. It just feels incomplete in that way to me. Is that okay to say?
Sure.
Yes.
And there's a couple of things I'll
Okay.
say about that. One is that
Okay.
if that's an issue, then probably that Susie can be involved in that as far as the course that addresses some of that, the OT course that that will be mandated. But also, these are the rules, not the law. And people
Okay.
have to be responsible for knowing the law. And this just implements the law. And there's yes, everything should be clear and unambiguous, but at the same time, we can't literally hold somebody's hand through the entire process of being a
Sure.
professional occupational therapist. So I hear your concerns. I think they're valid, and we just have to walk that line between an individual's practitioner's responsibility to know the law and the boundaries of the law and what our rules tell them as far as how to implement it.
Sure.
Dr. Van, I would like to circle back to the vacation thing.
Okay, well, before we do this, if you would let me just say one thing, Ingrid.
Mhm.
There was a recent Act 322 of 2023 that Ms. Wilton and I are working through. It was Senate Bill 66 by Mills. It redefines a lot of these telehealth definitions that you're looking for, and we can refer to that if need be. But nonetheless, I think that's also, you have legal definitions that are by statute. You have those that are done by convention and how states regulate. And then you have what we're going to put in the rules. So we have to remember that. And again, Susie putting all that together in education will be very helpful. I apologize, Ms. Ingrid.
Oh, that's okay. So circling back to the vacation thing, if a occupational therapist licensed in Louisiana is treating a client via telehealth in Louisiana, then that client takes a vacation to Florida and wants a telehealth session. Currently, would the OT be allowed to provide that session while they were on vacation in Florida?
I think this is going to be what you want it to be right now. I think we have the opportunity to define that. My recommendation is we want to think about continuity of care and best practices, okay? And also keep the cost down, okay? Is it cost effective and best for the patient to see a new OT when they're only going to be in Florida for a week or 10 days? Okay. And so I think we have to structure our rules to say that it's in the best interest of patient care because of continuity of care and all of those matters and cost structures that say that this is probably the better way to do it. And I think we have the opportunity, as long as we don't exceed the authority of the law will always supersede. We will clarify the law, and that's one of the clarifications I think we can make.
Right. And keep in mind that no matter what our rules say, it can't supersede the law or rules of another state. And I think with the compact, like Glenn was saying, with the compact, there is some relaxation of the ability to practice other than in your own state, but a one-time, short-term, episodic, however we want to talk about it in terms of continuity of care is okay. But if this is a snowbird and they spend 6 months of the year in Florida and 6 months of the year in New York, that person who treats that patient is going to have to be compact permitted in both states.
I hear you.
That was my thought also. Like, it seems like it really just should be clear cut. Like, you can practice in the state you have the license in, because my definition of I'm going on a short-term vacation might be different than yours. And then that gets really squirrely. And I know I do telehealth, and in one of the states I work in, I have some clients who do take, they call them all vacations. And sometimes they're gone for 4 weeks out of the country. And sometimes they're gone for a weekend to another state. And I would not want to have the onus of determining what was vacation and what was permissible. I think very clear cut is much better for everybody. That's just my opinion.
Okay.
I think the way that things are written now, it's my understanding that if they were out of state, like even during COVID, we were not able to continue treatment. And then
No,
I'm sorry.
with all due respect, Ms. Darby, let's not use the COVID, because once the governor declared the COVID emergency in Louisiana, all of these telehealth regulations disappear, and they did disappear. And so people could have done it from anywhere on our citizens. But again, and that is still in the law, believe it or not, and that's still in our rules for doctors. But the new law says that all of these regulations on telehealth are going to disappear in a declared emergency. But it's our state's declaration for our licensees, okay? But again, and our patients. But again, we don't know what another state will do, and that's the responsibility, quite frankly, of the person who's doing the work in that state to know what their state law and regulations are when they get that permission / license in OT. And likewise, if you choose to do this through the compact, it is something that you're going to be responsible for. We in Louisiana are going to have our rules and law, but if you have a compact permission in Florida, you got to abide by Florida's laws.
Right. So do y'all feel like we need to make a reference somewhere in here to refer to the state law?
I think we do. I think maybe at the appropriate place and time when Pat and I can digest this and get all your recommendations, what you want. Because what's going to happen is when you finish with this document, Pat's going to go through this with a fine tooth comb, and we're going to go over it together to make sure we get all of these references and clarify all of your definitions and our definitions to make sure we're following all of the state law. So right now, the important work for you all is to put down what you want, and then we will implement it in APA language and make sure it follows and tracks the current law, because we are still sorting out, quite frankly, Act 322. The good news is it doesn't become effective till 2024.
Okay.
I do have a quick question, and we may have talked about this last time, and I have no memory, but in the very first paragraph, the last sentence where it says asynchronous store and forward transfers, what does that mean?
Well, okay, let me give you an example of asynchronous, and I think Glenn made a
I
very
know
good
what
point.
asynchronous means, but what is store and forward transfers?
Okay, store and forward would be like Dr. Collada has a pacemaker, okay? And once a week, Dr. Collada has his little pacemaker reader at home, and he reads his pacemaker, and that pacemaker is then linked to my cell phone, which then transmits the data to my cardiologist's office, okay? And he calls me up and says, we need to adjust your medicine, and we need to increase this, or we need to decrease that, or whatever. That's store and forward, okay? So again, that's not necessarily asynchronous. So we have store and forward, we have asynchronous, and we have the regular video live kind of thing like we're doing right now. And the most important thing is whether you use store and forward, which could be like texting, but not necessarily. It could be what I do. It could, and we have asynchronous and we have synchronous. All of them need to be HIPAA compliant. For example, you should not be doing telehealth by Zoom because Zoom is not HIPAA compliant. You should have a HIPAA compliant platform, and the entrepreneurial people will have to get their own. Those of you who work for institutions that have those platforms will use theirs. But the key is you've already got that in your regulations down in 7 that Darby sent us. And I think the important thing is to understand that standard texting is not HIPAA compliant. Zoom is not HIPAA compliant. There are HIPAA compliant systems for all of these, and it's the responsibility of the operator, the OT, to do this right through the HIPAA compliance portion.
Yeah, another example of store and or just like the store part is when you have like pre-approved maybe education courses or like a pre-recorded exercise program video that somebody would watch and then participate in on their own, things like that, like as it relates to OT.
Okay. Thank y'all. I mean, that makes sense. I didn't know what it meant.
Yeah. Like synchronous being like real time in sync,
Mhm.
like, and then asynchronous would be like a way that you would watch something or see something or record something that wasn't just in real time. It's weird words, but that's my
It is.
understanding of.
Okay, and then Glenn, you said you had another question about,
Yeah,
E.
number 4, letter E. It's just the wording of that doesn't make sense to me. It's
So-
like emergency contact information. Like,
So that would be if there is an emergency and we have their address and we're able to call 911, what family member would emergency contact would they like us to contact in the event that something happens and they are alone?
right. I'm just saying, like, the wording of that specifically, like, it seems like it's a grammatical error. Like, the client shall provide the OTP emergency contact information. I don't.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I see what you're saying now. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a OTP, their emergency contact information.
Yeah.
Okay. I would just, that was it. It was just like, I feel like there's a word missing or something.
Yeah. Okay, we'll fix that. Thank you.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Any other questions or comments about this, the proposed regulations?
That was all I saw whenever I read through it.
Okay. And again, what's gonna happen is we're gonna like put this into the rules and regs, and give 2 different versions to Dr. Van and Patricia, one with like markouts, and because this is an addition, this would be noted as an addition, and they'll look through it, put it in the correct format, look at the wording, make sure nothing's ambiguous, and then get back to us.
Now, look, it's taken y'all 10 months to get where we are. It may take Pat and I about 3 months to get what we need to do. So don't hold us to the next meeting when you finish.
No, I know. It's my goal to get it to y'all by December, and hopefully we'll do that. Okay.
Well, just as an aside, what
Yeah.
would happen in January, if you give it to us in December, we will be lucky to get the rules going in March if we're fortunate enough to do that. But during that time, while the rules process is going on from March to maybe next June or July, the law, Act 322, will prevail. So you know that.
Right. Right. Okay. So if we have no other questions, comments, edits, or changes, would someone feel comfortable making a motion to accept this to go into the rules and regulations?
I move to accept.
And that's Brenda. Okay.
I'll
And
second it, Amy.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? And anyone abstain? And Dr. Van, is there any public comment?
Let me check.
Thank you.
No public comment at this time.
Okay,
So
great.
now I have brought up the foreign trained issue for you all to review.
Yeah, so this is, I don't know, Ingrid, did you want to bring that up? I mean, did you want to pull that up on your screen so we can edit it?
I can.
Or do you want me to edit it?
Want to edit? Yeah, that'd probably be worth it. Let me see if I'm on. Yeah, I can share the screen, so I will do that now. Foreign train. Okay. And everyone, let me type so that you know this is me. Okay, did everyone, can everyone see that? Texas rules, hello?
Yep.
Okay, so we're on the right thing. This is the exact same thing that Dr. Van just had up, but now we can type on it.
And it's also in the cloud share as a PDF. it's easier for you to access it on your.
All right, so you want me to stop my share and let you share, Ingrid?
It let me do it. I think I did stop you because I think I am sharing.
Well, I'm not, but I'm still sharing, so I'm going to stop.
Okay.
Now I can see yours. Okay, go ahead.
So I did this several weeks ago and didn't have time to revisit it. So I guess we're looking at this together. Ohio, Alabama, I couldn't find any rules about foreign trained OTs. Texas talks about requiring academic supervised fieldwork requirements from an accredited program. And if foreign trained, because obviously most foreign programs wouldn't be accredited by AOTA. If foreign trained have met substantially equivalent academic requirements. So that's a little vague. That's what they've got. That was Texas rules in their Texas Act, their law. That's
Ingrid, can I ask you a quick question?
Go ahead.
Is this just to back up, because I know we talked about this before, but I want to kind of like get some background information. Tell me exactly what this is referring to. So someone who went to school, obviously not in the United States, but like did not take the NBCOT exam, or would take, is that what it's referring to as something like sort of equivalent? Or
I mean, if we want to accept an OT who was educated at a non-ACOT accredited school in a foreign country, simply based on them passing the NBCOT, then we could write it like that. We just don't have any rules one way or the other right now.
okay, so it would include both, like someone who did take the exam and someone who perhaps didn't or took something equivalent.
I wish I had reviewed these. Let's see what it said. An applicant approved by ACOT certificate.
Because some mention ACOT and then some mention not. So I was a little bit confused about like the definition, sort of like foreign trained or like licensed. It's just licensed in a foreign country. Like, is that kind of what we're talking about?
No, foreign trained means literally educated, because our current rules say that you have to be educated at an ACOT accredited university or college.
Right.
And these OTs have not been educated at an ACOT accredited. So if we want to accept foreign trained, then we have to look at that.
Okay.
Right now, I really can't find the verbiage in the Texas things that talk about
Yeah, it looks like Texas requires them, like it says in number, like under that section 454, number 1, from an educational program approved by ACOT, its predecessor organization, or another national credentialing agency provided by the board. Is that what you were looking for?
Where did you see that under Texas?
It's the like the third section, section 454-204, educational requirements.
Which, or another national accrediting agency approved by the board. Okay, I see that. All right, so that's what Texas has to say, that they have to satisfy, an applicant who is foreign trained must satisfy the exam requirements. That would imply the NBCOT, and complete academic requirements substantially equivalent to those under 454-203. So to me, it's a little bit vague, but I guess it's a case-by-case situation that they're saying that that their board would look at each foreign trained applicant and see whether their academic and supervised fieldwork requirements were substantially equivalent to what we would expect under an ACOT accredited.
At the risk of sounding somewhat crazy, if you're going to say NBCOT is the key to getting the foreign license, why wouldn't we just eliminate where they're trained and say you pass the exam, you get the license?
I'm not saying we couldn't. That we may decide that that's okay.
And then we do have in the state of Louisiana a requirement that they have a valid permission to live and work in the United States. And it would actually expedite and simplify licensing processes if we took out verification of schools for everybody and just say, if you pass the NBCOT, we don't care where you went to school. Because then they're the ones that are doing the determination. If you want to give up our ability to do that, you can recommend that to the board and the board could take that under advisement. I think the issue is we do have separate regulations for example, physicians that are foreign trained, and we constantly modify them because the real issue is for foreign trained schools, they now have established an equivalent to medical schools. Some are and some aren't in the United States. And so we have that to fall back on to make it expediting for them, their processes to get an unrestricted license. Here, I know that Pat and I attended a meeting about 1.5 years ago, 2 years now, in DC, that the NBCOT was very aggressively pursuing Ireland to be under this, and a few other countries. And I think that you might want to, if you're going to do anything, say be fluent in the English language, because let's say if they come from India and they don't speak English very well, but they pass the test, then you're going to be giving them a license. And so that may be why you want to keep them in a trained school in the United States, because it forces them to get better license skills. So it's a weighing act that you've got to make it work. But again, the subtleties of this have to be, we can't discriminate, and we have to make it fair for everybody. And if I said anything wrong, Ms. Pat, please jump in.
I want to share
Wait
with you
1
guys.
second. Kelly has her hand
Okay.
up. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Kelly?
Sorry, Kelly.
Yeah, I don't think that, I do like the idea of them having to be certified through NBCOT to cut down on a lot of the challenges we might face in trying to determine that. But I believe that NBCOT doesn't allow OTAs to be eligible for the exam if they were not educated at an ACODE accredited school, but they do allow OTDs and masters. So that's just one thing. I don't know what the process is to make them eligible, for OTs to be eligible, but I don't see a process for an OTA to be eligible.
So Kelly, if you look at Virginia, I can't tell exactly. Ingrid would have to scroll down. So Virginia mentioned something. So she has it highlighted about NBCOT, and then the test of English as a foreign language, or that could be waived. But in C, it says NBCOT as an occupational therapist or an occupational therapy assistant. So I don't know.
I was just looking at the NBCOT website, and it said it doesn't give the it just doesn't have an option for OT if you are not. It says the eligibility. I guess we could bring that up. Can you?
I shared that in the chat. That's what I was going to say, is that in the chat, I shared a link to the eligibility process. And so what if you're educated outside the United States, they have the whole process is called OTED, which is Occupational Therapist Eligibility Determination Process. And you can be a OTR or a CODA. But I think by saying that you have to pass the NBCOT does the vetting process for any international person already through that OTED, through the OTED process. So I think if we put just in our documentation that you have to pass the NBCOT exam, then that covers, then that they do all that for us.
So it'd be basically like us looking at Virginia's, because that's basically what they're saying. Like you would have to be.
I don't see that OTA listed. It says an entry level, a bachelor's degree in occupational therapy with a post-professional master's degree in occupational therapy, or a bachelor's degree in occupational therapy with a master's degree in a related field. I don't see anything about OTA.
Where are you on? Are you on that link that I sent you?
I shared it with everyone. Can y'all see it? I shared I'm on the NBCOT link that Glenn did. So hopefully that's what y'all are seeing.
I mean, maybe I'm
Yeah.
missing it, but it says
It's like the first two main like section headings are, am I eligible to take the MBCOT exam? And then the next one is, I earned my OT degree. It says I earned my OT degree in the United States. So I'm sorry, maybe I read that wrong. Okay.
because it says an OTR.
Oh, no.
must be-
And then below that, it says I earned my OT degree outside the United States. So is that what you were reading from, Kelly?
Yeah, but it just says
Are
OT,
y'all
Okay.
not
not,
OT.
let me make sure we're all looking at the same thing. Are y'all not seeing the NBCOT site shared right now?
I am.
Yeah, we see
I
it.
am.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. All right, so that we should all be looking at the same thing that says, I earned my OT degree outside the USA. And everything
OT.
Kelly said is correct. There's nothing in this section about education requirements for the person with a community college associate's degree.
Yeah.
Or a bachelor's degree. There's a bachelor's degree for OT with
Yeah.
a master's, but even if you have an OTA bachelor's degree, there's still nothing about that. It's like,
Yes.
if you're an OTA, you have to be ACODE accredited to be eligible, is my understanding.
It does look like NBCOT has left CODAs out of this process. So let's look back and see what Virginia had to say.
They mentioned assistance. So I mean, I can reach out to NBCOT and ask them if y'all would like just to clarify. But I think in the meantime, like, we can come up with some draft language and then we can just verify it. I don't want to leave them out, obviously, but it looks like the way that Virginia's written is that they would be.
And they might have left that open in the instance that NBCOT decides to do that or does do that, but it's still on them. But the way it's written now, it just doesn't look like they do.
I do like Virginia's submission of proof of proficiency in the English language by passing the TOEFL.
Yeah,
I really like that.
I do too. And I guess C is just something that, like, if they don't meet the education, so I guess if the academic and clinical fieldwork didn't meet the World Federation of OT, then they can provide the board verification of their education, training, and work experience.
Yeah, that looks like the sort of a case-by-case situation there.
Right, which I think is important just in case.
I mean, I'm trying to figure out a way to ask this question, but do we want to approve occupational therapists to be able to practice, occupational therapists who cannot, or OTAs who cannot meet the MBCOT requirements to still be able to provide occupational therapy services? Like, if our standards are less strict than NBCOTs, is that what we're trying to make happen? Because
No, we're not
I
trying to
guess,
make it happen.
no, and that's not, I don't mean that like in like a assertive way. I'm just saying, if maybe NBCOT didn't include OTAs on purpose, and I guess if so, that Darby, that would be, a good question to ask is, why are OTAs not included in the section right there? I earned my OT degree outside the US. But if they overlooked it, well then okay. But if they did that on purpose, well then I guess what was the purpose for not including OTAs in their in this process? And so if they have a reason, it'd be great to know that reason, and then we should probably abide by the same reason, I guess.
I would agree.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like our minimum would be that they pass the NBCOT exam. Like,
Yeah.
I think that's why we're all kind of looking at Virginia. So our question at NBCOT is that, if they're an OTA and they earn their OTA degree outside the US, would they be eligible to sit for the exam? Right? Because that's what your
That's
link
the
would
question.
say.
That's the question.
Okay.
But that's NBCOT's question, really not ours.
It's a question to ask NBCOT, but it might inform how we wind up writing our rules.
Right.
In their facts section, and now I got to get back to that screen again. You'd think I never looked at technology before. The question is, since I have a bachelor's in OT from my country, am I eligible to take the NBCOT CODA exam? And their answer is no, only individuals who have an OTA degree from an accredited OTA school in the US are eligible to take the CODA exam. So that answers the question of, did they just overlook it, or did they it doesn't say the reason, but it answers that question of, do they allow it?
Okay, well then they don't. So then that makes us be forced to make a decision whether or not we want to adhere to their standards as well, or do we want to make different decisions?
Let's start with just finding out if everybody agrees with Virginia's language about submitting proof of passing the TOEFL. Would everybody agree that that's important to include?
Yes.
I think that's important.
That's very important.
Okay.
Yes.
Then I think it sounds as if we all agree that we want any foreign trained OT to pass the NBCOT exam.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes, I agree.
What about the statement that TOEFL may be waived upon evidence of English proficiency? Do we want to include that?
How do you determine English proficiency in the absence of TOEFL?
That puts a lot of onus on somebody at LSBME to have a conversation with them.
Right. So leave that out.
Actually, we put that on the advisory committee, so I think you want to leave that out.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Glad I asked.
All right, so then we're just back to the actual schooling. So for American therapists, we have the standard of requiring that the person graduate from an ACODE accredited school. Dr. Van just mentioned that might not even be necessary, that if we wanted to, we could remove that. I prefer to keep it in, personally. But assuming we keep it in for Americans that they need to come from an ACODE accredited school, if they're foreign trained, do we keep it generic like Texas did and say just that it's an equivalent schooling, or do we be more specific like Virginia has been and saying that they have to be a member, their school has to be in a member association of WFOT?
What do you think of WFOT's requirements?
That's the next great question, because really at WFOT is just a member association. So I'm not even sure what they do to make sure that a school is legit.
I always thought it was the equivalent to our ACODE, but I could be wrong. Look that up.
I mean, I don't even know the purpose of the WFOT in this instance. I think that if they're just eligible to take the exam and pass it, if NBCOT determines that their education is equivalent enough to make them eligible and they pass it, that should be okay.
Okay. Yeah.
And if you do that, it keeps us, meaning the advisory committee and the board, from individually looking at every school to say, are they the equivalent? Because that language puts the onus on the boards to make the decision. We would have to go to the advisory committee with every new school that comes up, whether it's in Pakistan, Uganda, or whatever, and then that would delay the processes of licensing. And I'm trying to do everything I can to speed up licensing. So if NBCOT is the gold standard, and I know you want people to graduate from American schools if they're American kids, but the reality of it is, let's not discriminate. If NBCOT's requirements are good enough for you for foreign
Yeah.
medical graduate, then they ought to be good enough for American graduates.
I agree. I mean, it's because the WFOT, I don't even know if we are a verified by the WFOT.
So their website just says that they set the standard for occupational therapy education internationally and promote excellence in research and practice.
And I think I mean, Carolyn or Ingrid, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that that's a voluntary thing to be a part of, right? As long as, I mean, we're ACODE accredited, we don't have to be WFOT.
I think so,
Approved.
but in the standards, like if you send a student outside of the US, don't they have to be a World Federation OT approved? I've forgotten what it says exactly.
Yeah, they approve, they approve programs. So I think it seems like it's a membership thing, but it's also like they only approve entry-level programs that can be diploma, baccalaureate, master's, or doctorate level. They don't approve post-professional programs, is what they're saying. So they approve programs, approve the education programs, and then you can get a list of the programs that are approved. But they're all in foreign languages.
Am I muted?
I guess we need to do a little bit more investigating on WFOT because setting the standard is not the same thing as actually approving the program. Just because they set the standard doesn't mean that they are actually then going back and making sure that each program meets the standard. I don't know enough about it.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like they do because they have a list of who's approved and who's not, like.
I'm going to put something in the chat. This is from the standards.
Okay.
I cut off the word there, field work at the last thing, but
Okay.
I don't know if that's just because they're coming back here to test. I'm assuming.
So in our,
But if
standard,
that's,
I didn't even realize we had that, Carolyn, that if a student goes to a foreign country for their field work, they have to be supervised by an OT who graduated from a WFOT approved program.
right.
So that's probably where Virginia came up with the WFOT as being the standard.
Yeah.
But that's a totally different situation to me. I mean, that's when we're to maintain the ACODE approval. That makes sense.
I see where there's overlap though, because if you're sending a student to be supervised in a foreign country by a foreign trained OT, then it is your responsibility to make sure that the OT is competent, and they're saying if they've graduated from a WFOT approved program that they would consider them good to go.
So does that mean the NBCOT will not allow people to be eligible if they're not a WFOT approved?
I don't know.
Have to figure
I haven't looked at it closely.
You know, NBCOT and ACODE don't communicate. So it could be that they do.
But if you look at Virginia's language, it says that they shall successfully complete all academic and clinical fieldwork requirements of a program approved by a member association of the World Federation of OTs as verified by the candidate's occupational therapy program director and as required by the NBCOT. So it looks like NBCOT is requiring it because their language says and as required by NBCOT. So if that's the case, if we just put NBCOT, then they verify it, their education, before they allow them to sit for the exam.
Yes, and that's why I think we need to keep it simple and just say if
Right.
NBCOT approves it.
Right. So we can leave that out, and if they require it, then they're the ones that are gonna have to like verify that before they allow them to sit for the exam.
Do we want to review any other states? Let me see what else I had highlighted. Pennsylvania, board will accept credentials evaluation done by the NBCOT as proof that the foreign trained applicant has completed the educational requirements. So that's exactly what Pennsylvania is.
Yeah.
They're accepting the credentials eval done by NBCOT.
I think that's
Right.
simple
Right.
and clear.
And
And
they
the
also, go ahead.
criteria they have to pass the license exam. Or they include qualifying for a waiver. I'd rather not do that.
Yeah, no, I don't want to do that either. But I like their language on number 2, that the credentials for NBCOT.
Pennsylvania includes a requirement that the foreign trained applicant has to provide proof that they have professional liability insurance.
Nowhere does the board of we require people to have liability insurance in Louisiana.
Got it.
None of the other 14 license classes, but I will tell you that the way I read that was perhaps a little different, and I want to make sure we're all on the same page about Pennsylvania. The way I read it is that the very passage of the NBCOT will subsume that their credentials were verified. So you don't even have to worry, because it looks like Pennsylvania has a different licensing exam. Our board uses the NBCOT exam to be the licensing exam. So again, if they want to do something different, I'd like to know what licensing exam they use, because we use the NBCOT, and that would subsume they have done the credentials evaluation.
We can check into that. I would be shocked if any state wasn't using the NBCOT though.
Yeah. What makes you think, Dr. Van, that they're not using the NBCOT?
Because 2 refers to the NBCOT, and section B1 says pass the licensing exam. So I'm not sure what licensing exam they're referring to, and I don't have access to their statutory laws to see, like I could in Louisiana in a heartbeat, but I don't know.
Well, clearly we need to not allow Virginia OTs to practice in Louisiana then.
Pennsylvania.
Y'all vote. Let me tell you something. Y'all voted y'all got the compact, so they're going to be here doing telemedicine. If you want, we can't change that now.
My guess is that they just weren't very clear in this statement, but that's something we could follow up on for sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, I feel like we're all on the same page about having the NBCOT, like as the.
We see North Carolina specifically states it.
Yes, they specifically say NBCOT, right?
And what you highlight in green says they graduated from an accepted school, and you want to put that language in, that would be fine.
Yeah, that's probably better, because it says that is the proof that they graduated from an accredited curriculum.
Right.
And then the way they state that just seems very, very clear and unambiguous. I like that one.
Are you talking about North Carolina here with
Right.
evidence?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then we're not going to do anything like number 4, like good moral character, blah, blah, blah. I mean, they'll still have to do the other requirements like CUs and stuff, but.
Criminal background checks in the United States.
Right.
I don't know that we can, and I don't even want to go there to see if we have to do criminal background checks in foreign countries, because I think we have a law, we're going to follow it to the T.
Okay. So do we need to put in our language about the criminal background check for the United States, or?
No, I think again, what I'm really saying to you is, you really, if you adopt this language in 3 that you're highlighting right now, you basically don't have to make a separate category for American trained or foreign trained. It's the same license requirement for everybody. You would take, for example, if I were to go to, and I have them up and I'll just read them to you. In section 1907 of the law, I mean, the rules, qualifications of a license be of good moral character is defined by 1903. A citizen of the United States possess, current legal authority to reside and work in the United States, successfully completed the academic requirement to sit for the certification exam of the NPCOT, have taken and successfully passed the examination, file an application for licensure, present proof of current certification of the NBCOT, and that's it. So we would basically, they would have the exact same set of requirements that everybody else does. And that way, whether their requirements for, are different, but if they pass the NPCOT, they're done in Louisiana.
So
Just make things.
Yeah, maybe we just make it simple and put something in there like including foreign trained applicants. So
And the only thing we would have to add is the TOEFL.
Right.
The only thing we would have to add, if a foreign medical graduate, they have to have a TOEFL, pass the TOEFL. And don't say or an equivalent, because that way y'all are going to get into business, because I don't know the language. My licensing analysts don't know the language of occupational therapy. And so you would have to then determine if they are fluent in the language of occupational therapy and the nuances of the way you use the terms. And I can't do that. And I don't think my licensing agency agents should be able to do that as well. So I would say just pass the TOEFL and don't do anything else.
Okay. So tell me what section you were in under that, because the next thing on the agenda is to figure out where this goes.
That's going to be section 1907.
1907. Okay.
Qualifications for a license. Okay.
Yeah. Gotcha. So Ingrid or everyone, do you feel like if we just put a statement in here about foreign trained, like the same thing, but in addition would just need to pass the TOEFL?
I guess we're really saying like that we would be removing the language saying that an American therapist that it doesn't have, we're removing the thing about the ACODE accredited school and relying on NBCOT vetting all educational facilities. Is that what we're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, they won't vet the facility, but they'll, is that what you're saying? Wait.
We don't have to worry about it.
Never mind. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Scratch that.
And
And
then
we're
could
gonna-
it be as simple as just saying if foreign trained must pass the TOEFL?
Yeah. In addition
to.
Right. So I guess it would be like D.
An additional requirement for.
Yeah, so maybe we could insert a D that would say, I don't know if you have it pulled up, Ingrid, or if you want me to insert it, but like a D would be, if foreign trained, additional requirement would be to pass the TOEFL.
And I guess I don't really understand why they have to do that. That would be everybody that's not trained here has to pass it. What's the?
Yeah,
purpose
foreign
of that?
trained.
Why?
How do you know they can speak English and communicate with the patients?
Well, that's assuming that everybody only speaks English, and then every foreign trained person, a lot of them do speak English, I guess. I mean, like.
Okay,
I don't know.
with all due respect, they will be living and working now in the United States. So
Right.
they have to be facile with the English language, because they can't say, well, I didn't understand the rules of Louisiana because I don't read English. They can't have that, okay? They are responsible for the rules in Louisiana. They have to read English and understand English, okay? So likewise, they can't say, oh, well, I didn't know I had to have malpractice because I don't speak English. Well, that's why I think it's important to say they have an English language requirement. It's not discriminatory. They're going to be treating patients and they're going to have to be able to communicate with them in ways that the patient understands. And you can't guarantee that they'll only be treating people of their own language origin.
I agree completely. And OT programs who accept students from foreign countries usually require a certain score on the TOEFL in order to get into the program. So it is used within OT.
Are you okay with that, Callie?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was also thinking of the countries that do speak English, that they would still have to take it even though they speak English.
It would feel goofy, but then we would have to put the part about unless they could, the part I just took out, which TOEFL may be waived upon evidence of English proficiency. And then, then who decides that? Then we get into that.
Okay.
So all of this basically is just, we would be redoing our section 1907 and simply, y'all are saying just be adding this part I just put in red to our qualifications for a license section. If foreign trained, the applicant must submit proof of proficiency in the English language.
Yeah. So I think it'd be D.
In section 1907.
Yeah.
And none of this, we wouldn't even worry about saying any of this, that the part about the board accepting credentials evaluation done by NBCOT as proof, we wouldn't include any of that.
Well, I mean, I don't know that we could just do in addition. Well, I guess we would, because 2 says you have to be a citizen. 3 says completed academic field work. And the requirements by NBCOT, taken and passed the licensing exam, file an application for licensure, present proof of current certification by NBCOT in a manner prescribed by the board. So maybe it would be number 7, where we could just say if foreign trained, to also include passing the TOEFL. You know what I mean? Like, so that it's still like those qualifications.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
what I think makes sense. I also, though, wouldn't start the sentence with if, I would just start it with a foreign trained applicant must.
Yeah.
But what if I go out of the country to get my training? I'm foreign trained, but I grew up in South Louisiana. Do we have to say something like if English is not your native language or something like that?
That's so much better.
I mean, we could put that for sure.
To be eligible to take the exam?
Say it again.
I mean, if they can't, does NBCOT require it to be eligible to take the exam, I wonder?
Do they require the applicant, the foreign trained applicant to take the TOEFL?
Right, because I don't know how they would take and pass the exam if they couldn't read or understand, comprehend English.
It's a good question. If they provide it in other languages.
I would think even if you grew up here, but you were foreign trained, I think I don't know, somebody can just claim that English is my primary language, so then it gets to be a kind of a gray, like a gray area, like that just becomes like a claim that you could make at that point. Well, I mean, I guess you could prove through a background check, where you grew up. I guess that would show up on a background check. So then that statement could be verified. But then it's claiming that English is your primary language. I don't know. I just feel like if you just make it more simple by just saying that you have to prove that if you chose to go get foreign trained, then the consequence of being foreign trained would be passing the TOEFL. And then that would be that would kind of be the natural consequence of being foreign trained, I guess.
We don't do that for physicians, do we, Dr. Collada? I think there's work to do. I understand everybody's points, and I think you understand mine, and we can just give it some more thought. Because I agree with Dr. Collada, we don't want to be in the position of having to interview every foreign trained graduate to see if we think they speak well. But by the same token, I don't think that if I went to a program overseas and I've got a passport that shows I'm a an American citizen, that I have to come back and take the TOEFL before I can be an OT.
Right.
Well, I guess that would be different, right? You're an American. I guess that would be the thing that would prove it. You're an American citizen with a passport, and then you were foreign trained. Simply saying that somebody's foreign trained and that English is their primary language does, like, the citizenship, I think, is the key issue there, which ties all that together. I think that's a good thing.
I agree that that's a good hybrid between what we were both saying, just something
Well,
like.
We're saying that our qualification for license is that you're a citizen. So you could be like,
Not necessarily.
foreign trained and then come back and be a citizen and not speak good English. I think the question is like, if the NBCOT exam is only in English, then is it safe to assume that they're proficient in English?
Right. That's my thing. I mean, you don't have to be a U.S. citizen to get the license, though. Right?
Yeah, no, it's saying that you do. Our number 2 qualification for license is be a citizen of the U.S. or possess a valid and current legal authority to reside and work.
Okay, yeah, so
by
that's
usage.
the difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you don't have to be a citizen, but I mean, there are citizens who can't speak English, so.
Right.
Well.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know, I just,
your exam is in English.
then it kind of assumes that you can, at least enough to pass the exam.
You can read it. You may not be able to speak it. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got 1 and 2. I'm sharing the screen. Hopefully everybody's seeing the rules. I'm on section 1907, qualifications for licensure. Good moral character, that would apply to everybody, whether foreign or not, citizen or having a green card. 3, here's where we're talking about potentially removing this stuff about successfully completing academic experience or.
No, we wouldn't remove it because it just says that meets the NBCOT.
Okay.
Now, I don't know if we want to keep our other certifying entity approved by the board. For number 3.
Sorry to interrupt. I know my hands, somebody has their hand up in front of me, but
Oh, sorry.
if you say if you keep number 3, that means we got to verify it. Whereas it's going to slow down processing of your licenses. So my feeling is if NBCOT is going to be good for everybody, then let's just make it a requirement and not worry about where they were trained or got their education.
So you would say for number 3, take out the words or such other certifying entity as approved by the board. Because this is.
Let's go over it. Okay, so first of all, supervised fieldwork experience to sit for the certifying examination for occupational therapist, registered or certifying exam for occupational therapist as administered by NBCOT. So first of all, we would have to verify this. I think rather than say successfully completed, you could put the language to say have passed the certifying examination for OT, registered OT, or certified CODA as administered by the NBCOT with their requirements for supervised field work assumed to be part of the process to be NBCOT certified. And that way we don't have to get their academic credentials.
So that would be number 4, have taken and successfully passed the licensing exam. And then we would just put either required by the board or by NBCOT.
Brenda has her hand up.
I'm sorry, who?
Brenda. And
Brenda, I'm sorry. Go
no,
ahead.
you're good. You're good. And mine just goes back to when we're talking about the linguistics of English proficiency and looking at language from TOEFL. It refers to non-native English speakers. And so would that be a phrase we want to remember to help us when we get to that?
Yes, I like that. Non-native English speakers.
But that's what we said earlier, and Glenn said that's subjective because you can say that you are.
But
Right.
if people can lie on any piece of an application. At some point, you have to.
No, I agree. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we go back to this, we want to perhaps revise number 3 and then change 4 to name NBCOT, and then perhaps number 7, put something about the TOEFL if you're not native English speaking. Is that basically what I'm hearing?
Yes, hold on.
Because you can't sit for the NBCTO exam if you don't have number 3. Is that correct?
That's what I was wondering. And if I can't sit for NBCOT until I've completed my field work, then does number 3
Then we
even
don't need
need
it.
to exist?
Right.
That's what
Okay.
I'm trying to say. Thank you, Carolyn, for saying it so eloquently.
Yeah.
I probably have to go back and redo because I didn't hear that.
Okay, so number 3,
Can
we
you-
would take out and then clarify 4 as the examination being the NBCOT exam instead of required by the board, but just replace it with the language that is.
Okay. Have taken and successfully passed the licensing exam as administered by the NBCOT.
You could probably take out the word successfully because they either passed or
Right.
they didn't.
Yeah.
Pat, could we say NBCOT or its successor?
I think if we're going to limit it to NBCOT, then we just need to leave it like that, and we'll have to change the rules if that somehow in the future becomes not the.
And that was one thing that I was also thinking about, like right now, the NBCOT vets the educational institution that the person applying to take the exam is coming from. But what if at some point in the future, NBCOT no longer takes that on? And if somebody pays the money, they can take the exam. I don't know. I'm just playing devil's advocate.
We just have to revise the rules, but we're also going to put in here that these rules need to be looked at and revised on a either like yearly basis or 2-year. We're going to determine that, but that's definitely going somewhere in here. We're not putting the committee through this again.
Okay, so have taken and passed the licensing exam as administered by the NBCOT.
In accordance with
Saying anything about OT education, like what I wrote here, proof of completion of OTA education and supervised fieldwork, or the board will accept NBCOT.
I don't even think you need to have any of 3
No,
because
yeah.
it subsumes that if you pass the NBCOT, you had their approval for your field work.
Right. I thought we were just taking 3 out completely.
Okay. This feels weird not to have anything about the education at all.
Well, don't we still have to have, doesn't the graduate still have to provide their information from the school? Like, isn't that a new requirement that they have to send in? What was the new thing that was added that's not on the list?
Their diploma.
Their diploma, yes.
So 3
Um,
needs
That's
say
part of,
they have to submit their diploma, a copy of their diploma, because that's what number 3 needs to say. If that's
Is it their diploma or their transcript?
It's the new thing that they have. I can't remember what it was that came out last year. That was, we didn't know about. What was it, the diploma or the, I think it was a diploma.
It was, but it was a mistake, and our May graduates did not have the trouble that your December graduates had.
Oh, good, okay.
But we have a student that just moved, well, he's an OT, but moved to Louisiana, and he was asked to get his transcript. So I'm not sure where the inconsistencies are and if that's really a requirement or not.
Okay, right now, because 3 says have successfully completed an academic and supervised fieldwork, we get their transcript. Now, you put that in because we didn't envision this foreign opportunity when we made those rules and the modifications in the past, because that was almost 5 months ago, is my recollection when we did that. But when you assume number 4, and number 4, now the NBCOT is going to do all that work that we learned that they're doing, you don't need 3, and we don't, at that point, we drop 3 out, and then the ladies in licensing will not have to get a transcript.
Got it.
Brenda, you have your hand up?
Yes. So in number 4, it says have taken and passed the licensing examination.
That's certification.
So instead, should it say have taken and passed the NBCOT, and then those words up from number 3, certification examination for occupational therapist registered or certification examination. And we can make sure that that is exactly what NBCOT calls it.
Repeat what you just said so I can type it.
I took it from number 3, certification examination for occupational therapist registered or certification examination for occupational therapy assistant. And then I followed that up with, and we should verify that that is the words that NBCOT currently calls it.
Got it.
Can somebody look that up real quick?
Well, to be sure, what we've discussed already is when you put that in, you will not have foreign trained OT assistants come through our licensing successfully. And until such time that NBCOT lets them take the test.
Right now, that is true, the way that
Right now, it's not the way it is, but when we pass these rules, it will be that way.
Right.
it's possible. We'd have to get the why behind NBCOT not allowing OT assistants to take the exam if they're foreign trained. My guess would be that the education for OT assistants in some foreign countries might be uneven.
Let's not buy other people's problems. If we're going to accept NBCOT, let's accept NBCOT.
I don't know that this language needs to be on there, but if it does, we can. Okay, so have taken and passed the NBCOT certification exam for OT registered or certification exam for OT assistant as administered. Now I'm just repeating myself. I don't have to say as administered by the NBCOT, right?
No, because you say NBCOT.
Okay.
And you can take out the required by the board because subchapter D just says it's like for purposes of licensure that we use the NBCOT exam.
Okay. All right. File an application for licensure. Present the proof of their certification.
So do we want to put 7? Number 7 would be where we would enter the TOEFL. If English is not, how is it? I think Brenda, you found it. If English is,
Non-native?
I lost it. That's why I said we should jot it down. Non-native English speaker.
If English is not native language, that's what I wrote down, but I don't know if that's exactly how you said it.
I'm looking. I'm trying to get back to that screen. I was looking for the name of the test. Non-native English speakers.
It was must submit proof of proficiency in the English.
Or English language proficiency.
Was the way that Virginia had it written, I think. That
Okay,
we,
yeah.
Like,
I just did it the way Virginia did. So non-native English speakers must submit proof of
proof
proficiency.
of proficiency in the English language by passing the test of English as a foreign language, and then parentheses TOEFL. Period.
Darby, can you see what I read?
Yeah, I don't know if we need, do we need Dr. Van with the score acceptable to the board? Is it just a pass, a fail? Because you said by passing. I think Patricia's point was like NBCOT, you either pass it or you don't.
Yeah, I don't think we need to have the board individually decide what constitutes passing. If it's good enough for the test, just, that's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah, and again, I think we'll do a little more research into TOEFL, but I agree with Pat. That's all
There
we're gonna
might
do
not
is
be a passing score.
they pass the test. They determine the passing test.
Yeah, okay. Okay. I will say this makes me super uncomfortable about the previous portions of the rules that we looked at that may need more modifications, but I'm glad that we did this. Okay, so let's just kind of quickly go through B. Ingrid, if you can, just to make sure that we're not being repetitive of this, or it doesn't say anything that there.
I just looked up the TOEFL passing score and it said it's set by each institution.
I had a feeling there was probably a reason they put that TOEFL might not have a passing score.
Yeah.
And it's usually, used for institutions who take,
I still say at some point at the granular level, if we start getting complaints about an OT who is unable to communicate with his or her patients, then we can take appropriate action. But I think if they go somewhere, they pay the money, they take the test and they pass the test wherever they are, that's a baseline that we can probably live with.
I think what they're saying there, Patricia, is you get a score, you don't get a pass or a fail. And
That's
so
what-
Yeah, it's like
institution-
the SAT, like you'd have to get a score of 1200 to be able to, be accepted to attend LSU.
All
So
right,
it
I
would,
see.
we would have to figure out what an acceptable TOEFL score would
Okay.
be
All
in
right.
order to practice in Louisiana or
Well,
whatever.
somebody can call Virginia and ask them what they.
Yes.
It does
It's,
say that the score range is 0 to 120. It says it's accepted by more than 11,000 universities and other institutions in over 190 countries. So
I'll see if I can find out what LSU accepts. LSU Health Sciences Center.
Yeah, that's perfect.
the average score is 90.
It goes from below basic to advanced. But again, maybe we should just find out if NBCOT requires that as part of their certificate or eligibility process for foreign trained students. And then we wouldn't even have to worry about it.
We can look into that too. I didn't see it when we were glancing, but
I don't know. I don't know. Still having a hard time with that one.
And then, Ingrid, if we go back to the words for the name of the examination, AOTA calls it the National Board of Certification in Occupational Therapy Examination.
And they don't break it down into,
So, no, it just says, it simply, and this is from the AOTA website. It says, in order to practice in the United States, you must pass the National Board of Certification in Occupational Therapy examination. So maybe we just, instead of saying NBCOT, we spell it out and stick the word examination after it.
of occupational therapy certification examination.
National Board of Certification in Occupational Therapy examination. So you're spelling out NBCOT and then just putting examination after it. Yeah, so we don't need the NBCOT part. There you go. Taken and passed the National Board of Certification. Yep.
Should we add for OT and OTA or OTAs?
So we at this point, we have to, at this point, we're saying that it would be for both OTs and OTAs. And of course, because NBCOT will not allow foreign trained OTAs to take the exam, they're not going to be able to practice here in Louisiana.
Right, but is number 4 just about a general license, not necessarily getting into the foreign?
It's all of them. We're combining. We're not going to do a separate section of foreign training because it's like Dr. Van said, we all have to meet the same.
Right. I just didn't want that to be confusing since number 4 is talking about people trained here in the U.S. Because I know that that's the name of the exam, have taken and passed the National Board of Certification in Occupational Therapy examination, but it also says in OT or OTA, because this number 4 applies to both OTs and OTAs, right?
So could we say have passed the examination as an occupational therapist or occupational therapy assistant?
Well, the exam, I think, is called the National Board of Certification Occupational Therapy Examination. And then I think it says in occupational therapy or in occupational therapy assistant, maybe.
Does it say that?
I have not found that yet, but that doesn't mean it doesn't say it.
Oh, what if you just put in parentheses after that NBCOT? Scroll down a little bit, Ingrid, because we can only see like number 5. The other way. Right there. Have taken and passed the National Board of Certification in OT, and then right there, NBCOT examination.
What Kelly is pointing out, she wants it to be clear that we mean both OT and OTA. But I mean, we can clarify, but we are talking about all applicants when we
Right.
We're talking about all applicants to be eligible for a license, and applicant shall, and we mean all of them. OT, OTA, trained here, trained elsewhere.
Yeah.
On
But
number
we-
4, isn't it the National Board for Certification?
And I was,
It is the National Board for Certification in Occupational Therapy.
Right.
and that.
Okay. All right, so is everybody okay with these changes of section 1907?
I am. It's so weird not to have anything about education, but I'm getting over it.
Well, it's all, I mean, you have to have it to take the exam, so you don't need all this superfluous language.
Mhm.
And that will expedite licensing because we don't have to track down transcripts.
Right.
The graduates are going to be thrilled.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I'll motion to accept the changes as presented in section 1907.
Are we still gonna double check the TOEFL information?
Oh, we
About
wound up,
passing-
we
And if
did
it's
wind up
just
having that with a score acceptable to the board because we will have to, we have to create a
Minimum.
pass.
Yeah, minimum.
And how, I know this is up to the board, but how would I guess the board gets the transcript from NBCOT to let them know that it's a foreign trained student. Otherwise, you just get a test score. So how will you know that they need the TOEFL? Is there going to be a question on the application that asks about where they were trained?
Well, yeah, there'll be an attestation of some sort for the native speaker thing.
I like that.
Mhm.
Well, I move to accept the changes.
Okay. I'll second it. Darby. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Hi.
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstained? Hey, Dr. Van, can you please see if there's any public comment?
There was no public comment before or after the vote.
Okay, thank you. So I guess that answers my question that's on the agenda of where we place this. Okay. Okay. So the next one should be pretty quick. The next thing on the agenda would be the rules review. So, Ingrid, if you could scroll to section 1961. So this would be under the delegated duties and responsibilities of OTAC. And this is something we had talked about and I had on the list for us to do of possibly adding a number 9 to include a systematic review and revise the governing rules and regulations as needed or suggested by the board, or like how often do we feel like these need to be reviewed? Anyone have any thoughts?
Well, under the law, we actually have to review every 5 years, no matter what. So if you want to do 2 years or 3 years, 1 year's too soon, frankly, because there's so much lead time. But if you want to say 2 or 3, I think that would be fine.
So let's keep this in mind that each person's term is 2 years. Like that would be the minimum. I don't know if we need to even factor that in, but it just kind of crossed my mind. So Do y'all think doing it every 3 years is okay, or should we do every 2 years? So that everyone on the committee would actually partake in that, and sometimes there may not need to be a change.
I would think every 3 years would be often enough.
Okay,
I would think 3 also, because I mean, it seems like, okay, like we're gonna review these and then they might not even be the next set until
another
2
year.
years. And
Yeah.
then, yeah, so I would think 3 would be a good number.
Okay. So maybe conduct a systematic review and revision of the governing rules and regulations every 3 years. Okay.
I don't mean to be picky, but I don't know what systematic means, so I would just say conduct a review.
Okay. It's just a fancy word, Patricia, but means nothing.
Oh, no, I mean, I shouldn't say I don't know what it means. I do know what it means, but I don't know what it means in
Right.
this context. And so if you just, and actually conduct a review, you could just say review, but I guess-
Okay.
It's more because of we started each of these with a verb, the delegated,
yes, very good.
yeah.
And Pat, rather than say governing rules, should it just say LSBMA rules for OT/OTA?
Yes.
Yeah, that's probably a lot more. Because I was thinking it needed to say rules and regulations so they knew exactly what we meant, but that's even better. Or OTP.
Um,
Would it be plural? Sorry, Ingrid.
come on.
And well, and on that same sentence, Ingrid, if we go back to the starting with conduct, could it start with review and revise as needed?
Review and revise the LSBME rules for OTP every 3 years or as needed.
I'm sorry, I was trying to
No,
think the revision would
it
only
would
be
say,
every 3 years.
They review every 3 years and revise as needed.
And revise as needed. There you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so if you start it with review, that's your verb and you don't have to put conduct.
Right.
Yeah. So start it with review and take out conduct A.
Review the LSBME rules for OTPs every 3 years and revise as needed.
Yeah. I love it. Simple. Not review of, just review. Yep. All right. So that's, any questions, comments, or anything else about the change to section 1961?
I like that.
Yeah. Okay. I'll make a motion to accept revision to section 1961 as presented.
Darby, you just made the motion.
I'm sorry.
Did you just make the motion to accept?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
I second. Kim.
Kim seconded. Thank you.
And before you vote, there's no public comment.
Thank you. All in favor? Please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? Okay. Yay, that was quick. Thank you. Okay. Do we need a quick break? Because the next thing would be to mosey on down to the very last subchapter. to look at that, which is the unauthorized practice prohibitions and causes for administrative action, which is technically the last section of the rules and regs. Do you want to take a quick break or?
Yeah, maybe we can come back at, at 12 or 11:56 or whatever you think.
Yeah, let's come back at 12. That gives us like 8.5 minutes.
Okay.
Is that okay? So we're going to break until 12 o'clock.
All right.
I may be a little bit late, but I have a problem I have to solve here in the office, but I'll try and be back within 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you.
We need to get close.
Ingrid, did you see Glenn's note that he's leaving at 12:30?
Oh, no, I didn't.
Okay, I noted it in my notes, but just to be sure. Okay, go back. Like, I'm not sure if we should move on or if she would do the new business. I don't know how long Dr. Van's ACOT thing that he added is gonna take.
Oh, well, he's not here though.
No, so I guess we can just get started and maybe I'll try to stop at like 12:30.
Maybe as soon as Dr. Van gets back on.
Okay. So you still have shared, you want to pull up the rules that you're working on?
Yeah, I've been having them up. You can't, is that not what you see, Darby?
I did until a second ago. Oh, there they are. They
Uh-huh.
just went on the side. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I'm on the unauthorized practice prohibitions section.
Yeah. So this is our last section to kind of go through. So at the, let's see, the beginning is unauthorized practice. So A, no individual shall engage in the practice of OT in this state in the absence of a current license or permit duly issued by the board. So like that really doesn't need any change. And then we jump to section 4929, false representation.
Do we have a permit? What is that?
What's that?
It said license or permit. I didn't know if we have a permit.
Temporary permit?
Oh, that's what that means. Okay. I just thought it was a temporary license, but I get it. Is it called a temporary permit earlier, or is it just called a temporary license?
I think it's temporary license, right?
Yeah, I think permit is old language.
Okay, so why don't we put or temporary license?
Mm-hmm.
Good catch, Kelly.
And I know this is in the earlier part, but speaking of temporary license, were we going to keep that verbiage that said that it expires whichever is longer? If it expires after 90 days or?
Yeah, just make a note of that. We need to
Okay.
get back to that because I
Okay.
have a separate note for us to address that email that we never did finish, but we weren't going to do it here.
Excuse me, if I could say this is Phyllis Johnson. If I could say this, Dr. Van has he's concerned about the use of that language, temporary license versus temporary permit, because in our system it's listed as temporary license, but license means one thing, permit means another thing. So I guess when he gets back on the line, he can maybe address that, but he definitely has a concern about that language of a temporary license. And in the system, we just change it to temporary, application and process temporary license issue, temporary permit issued is how so we began that recently. So he has a concern about the use of the language temporary license versus temporary permit.
Well, that's good to know.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. So, okay.
Yeah, I just looked up the difference. Permits require regular inspections and limited time and more restrictions, where licenses are more or less permanent with fewer restrictions and fewer inspections. So I didn't know there was a difference.
No, good.
Okay, so I'm going to mark that to go back and look at earlier too. Thank you. Okay. Okay. All right. So we will move on. So false representation of, so this looks extremely wordy to me, but we're gonna go through. No person who is not licensed under this chapter as an occupational therapist or an occupational therapy assistant, or whose license has been suspended or revoked, shall use in connection with his name or place of business the words occupational therapist, licensed occupational therapy assistant, licensed occupational therapy assistant, or the letters OT, LOT, OTA, LOTA, or any other words, letters, abbreviations, or insignia indicating or implying that he is an occupational therapist or an occupational therapy assistant, or in any way orally, in writing, in print, or by sign, directly or by implication, represent himself as an occupational therapist or an occupational therapy assistant. No person who is not licensed under this chapter as an occupational therapist or an occupational therapy assistant, or whose license has been suspended or revoked, who is not currently certified or registered by and in good standing with NBCOT, shall use in connection with his name or place of business the words occupational therapist registered, licensed occupational therapist registered, certified occupational therapy assistant, or licensed certified occupational therapy assistant, or the letters OTR, LOTR, CODA, or LCODA, or any other words, letters, abbreviations, or insignia indicating or implying that he is an occupational therapist registered or a certified occupational therapy assistant, or in any way orally, in writing, in print, or by sign, directly or implication, represents himself as such. Be thorough. Okay, I personally think that the NBCOT part should be like a B, like it should be separate and not all one big, like blurry language. And obviously we need to switch out like OTP for a lot of it to keep it not super wordy. And I guess I'd probably refer to Patricia to see if like there's a more simplified way of like stating this, or if this is basically.
No, we can definitely work on that for next time and give you a suggestion to just don't say you are if you're not.
Yeah, like I do like the separation between like if you know, like you can't be an if you're not licensed, but then the B part with the NBCOT with the registered. Kim, you have your hand up?
Never mind. I see that they're changing all the pronouns already. So we're good.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, y'all. I try to watch for the hands, but the screen of everybody's names goes on and on and on. Thank you. Yeah. I think a lot of people aren't aware of the NBCOT.
Is this where you wanted to start the new paragraph B, where I just created a B?
It's like where it says new person. Is that where?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I had to scroll up on the screen. Yeah. Yeah.
And we do have OTP defined earlier, right?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yep. And then the next section is just whoever violates the provision of this section shall be fined not more than $500 or be imprisoned for not more than 6 months or both. Like, I don't even know how to comment on that because I don't know where that came from. Or, I mean, Patricia, is that like a legal thing that came from y'all's perspective, or is that something we have control over? Or
Yeah, I mean, it predates me, obviously, but there has to be a stick. There has to be a penalty for failure to abide by the rules, also to cover the administrative costs of investigation and pursuing anything. So virtually every licensed class has fines and penalties for breaking the rules.
okay, so do you still think that the 500's fair? Like, do we leave it, or?
Well, if you want to increase it, I can't remember if the occupational therapy law grants more than that to start. I'll look that up, but obviously if you could ask for, if we have the authority to ask for more without going to the legislature, I would surely suggest doing that.
I wonder where the 6 months imprisonment came from. Is that, we can control that?
I don't know.
No, that's gotta be, I'm gonna,
Okay, yeah, I didn't know we could. Must have come from
Yeah.
somewhere.
Okay.
yeah, it's not us that puts them, obviously in jail, but
Right.
it is a legal penalty for this,
Okay.
but I'm gonna get the exact language for you if I can find it.
Yeah. You okay if we move on and then we can go back?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thank you. All right, so section 4931 is suspension and revocation of license, refusal to issue or renew, unprofessional conduct. So A is the board may refuse to issue or renew, may suspend or revoke, or may impose probationary conditions on any occupational therapy or occupational therapy assistant license if the licensee or applicant for license has been guilty of unprofessional conduct which has endangered or likely to endanger the health, welfare, or safety of the public.
And there's a typo there that's not ours, but may revoke or many impose. That should be may impose.
May, yeah.
Okay, well, the previous one about the fines and the imprisonment is copied directly word for word from the law, including all of the run-on part of A. So if, but it was, it looks like there was an addition in 2018. So I don't know if the addition in 2018 changed the fine amount. Either way, still, that's a long time ago. And so if the board undertakes to seek fee increases across the board, as they may well be doing, I would certainly suggest that they add that into it. But if not, we're stuck at the cap of the $500 for the time being.
Okay.
Thank you.
It looks like at the bottom of that section under the historical note, like the last revision was 2015 of this. I don't know if it changed that in particular, but so even if it changed in 2018, it still wasn't, it didn't, these rules don't reflect that.
Right. So whatever. Okay. So obviously the fees were set before 2015.
15, yeah.
So yeah. So way due for a reality check on the cost of
Right.
having to process any kind of false, unauthorized practice type claim.
Yeah, because we don't really know that in 2015, that's even what they changed. It could have been something else, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
So, okay. All right, so on with that. All right, so where were we? You did A, Ingrid.
We
Yeah.
need there's also a word missing, which has endangered or is likely to endanger.
As endangered or is likely. Yep, I see that.
Go, Brenda. Okay. B, as used herein in RS 373011, unprofessional conduct by an occupational therapist or occupational therapy assistant shall mean. So what is the RS? Is that
Revised statute. That means the law.
statute? Yeah, okay. Conviction of a crime or entry of a plea of guilty or nolo, I don't even know how to say that, contendere to a criminal charge constituting a felony under the laws of Louisiana, of the United States, or of the state in which such conviction or plea was entered. Number 2, conviction of a crime or entry of a plea of guilty or nolo contendere to any criminal charge arising out of or in connection with the practice of occupational therapy. And it's missing a space. 3, perjury, fraud, deceit, misrepresentation, or concealment of material facts in obtaining a license to practice occupational therapy. 4, providing false testimony before the board or providing false sworn information to the board. 5, habitual or recurring abuse of drugs, including alcohol, which affect the central nervous system and which are capable of inducing physiological or psychological dependence. 6, solicitation of patients or self-promotion through advertising or communication, public or private, which is fraudulent, false, deceptive, or misleading. I know we refer to them as clients throughout this document, so I don't know if we need to change that. 7, making or submitting false, deceptive, or unfound claims, reports, or opinions to any patient, insurance company, or indemnity association, company, individual, or governmental authority for the purpose of obtaining anything of economic value. 8, cognitive or clinical incompetency. 9, continuing or recurring practice which fails to satisfy the prevailing and usually accepted standards of OT practice in the state. 10, knowingly performing any act which in any way assists an unlicensed person to practice occupational therapy or having professional connection with or lending one's name to an illegal practitioner. 11, paying or giving anything of economic value to another person, firm, or corporation to induce the referral of patients to the occupational therapist or occupational therapy assistant. 12, interdiction of due process of law. 13, inability to practice OT with reasonable competence, skill, or safety to patients because of mental or physical illness, condition, or deficiency, including but not limited to deterioration through the aging process and excessive use or abuse of drugs, including alcohol. 14, refusal to submit to examination of inquiry by an examining committee of physicians appointed by the board to inquire into the licensee's physical and or mental fitness and ability to practice OT with reasonable skill or safety to patients. 15, practicing or otherwise engaging in any conduct or functions beyond the scope of occupational therapy as defined by the Act or the rules. 16, the refusal of the licensing authority of another state to issue or renew a license, permit, or certificate to practice OT in that state, or the revocation, suspension, or other restriction imposed on a license, permit, or certificate issued by such licensing authority, which prevents, restricts, or conditions practice in that state, or the surrender of a license, permit, or certificate issued by another state when criminal or administrative charges are pending or threatening against the holder of such license, permit, or certificate. 17, violation of the Code of Ethics adopted and published by the American Occupational Therapy Association Incorporated, or violation of any rules and regulations of the board or any provisions of the Act as amended. Wowza.
Good job reading that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I was trying to read slow to make sure I didn't skip any of like where Brenda finds the typos that I just read right over.
It seems really thorough.
Yeah, I mean, we do throughout the document, instead of saying patients, say clients. I don't know if we want to keep that consistent, especially if this is probably coming from the law.
I was changing it because I wasn't thinking about the law. In order to be consistent with the rest of our rules, I have been changing the word patients to clients as we went along.
Yeah, I mean,
But
I think that's appropriate.
Consistent with the law, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really see anything that like gave a red flag that was any different than what we know. I can't think of anything that needs to be added. If anyone else can think of anything that's like new, or, I mean, do we go there to add anything about being HIPAA compliant? Like, I don't know, because that's sort of like a newer thing with the telehealth. I don't know. I mean, I figure that we have laws for that in other places.
That's what I'm thinking. There's other sets of laws and regulations that cover that, and being HIPAA compliant shouldn't be new just because we have telehealth. We should all
Yeah.
have been practicing it all along.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, we'll go to C then. Denial, refusal to renew, suspension, revocation, or imposition of probationary conditions upon a license may be ordered by the board in a decision made after a hearing in accordance with the Administrative Procedure Act and the applicable rules and regulations of the board. 1 year after the date of the revocation of a license, application may be made to the board for reinstatement. The board shall have discretion to accept or reject an application for reinstatement, but shall hold a hearing to consider such reinstatement. I mean, I can't even comment about that because I think that's like their policy.
That's your due process rights, basically.
Right.
Now, just one thing, you need to understand that we went through this. Many people do not understand what HIPAA compliance means with telemedicine. So I think it's reinforceable in the telemedicine era. But I also got to tell you, I think that a lot of people, particularly the OTAs, have not been really cognizant of how detrimental a violation of HIPAA could be to their pocketbook and their reputation. So I think probably keeping it there is worthwhile, but I don't care if you take it out because there's going to be other ways we get to them because they violated other laws. But I can tell you, I've known doctors who didn't understand HIPAA and got hit with hundreds of thousands of dollars in fines. So understand, even doctors don't know what HIPAA requires of them.
Okay, Dr. Van, we did have a quick question or comment that was brought up by Patricia at the beginning of this.
Phyllis was the one.
I'm
Phyllis
sorry.
pointed out, yeah, Phyllis pointed out that
Yeah.
temporary license versus temporary permit.
Okay, well, again, I think anything that's temporary should be a permit and not a license.
Okay, well, it was just in the wording of this, so we just wanted you to kind of like peek at it if you don't
Okay.
mind.
Sure. I'm sorry, I had to go put out
No,
another
it's
file.
okay.
I've got it pulled up, Darby. You can see it.
So it's under the unauthorized practice, and it just says
I've got
that
it pulled up, Darby. If you look at what I'm sharing, I've got it right there.
yeah, and I was just trying to orient him under 4927.
Right.
No individual shall engage in the practice of occupational therapy in this state in the absence of current license or temporary permit. It did say or permit, so we weren't sure.
Well, in essence, the big deal, and I'm not a lawyer, I'm a gynecologist, but what lawyers have explained to me, and Pat can elaborate, is a license gives you property rights that you have to be protected by. A permit does not. A permit can be withdrawn without due process. And, permits in essence can be temporary, but basically they're all temporary because they don't even have to be renewed. They just can be stopped. So again, maybe Pat will give you a different view of that, but that's how I understand it as a gynecologist. When we grant a license, we are granting property rights, and I don't think we should do that unless they met all of their qualifications.
Yeah, I think we since I've been at the board, there's been a movement to try and distinguish between a license and something that's less than a license. And by and large, we call them permits. I think there are some certificates that apply to extra authorizations or verification. Yeah, extra credentials, but you either have a license or you have a temporary permit. And of course you can't be arbitrary or just completely violate somebody's rights with respect to a permit. but it does not confer the same level of property right as a license does.
Okay. So I think that's appropriate, correct? Or temporary permit? Or do
Yes,
we
I
need
think
the
that's
word temporary?
completely appropriate, completely
Okay.
appropriate.
Thank you. All right. That was our question for you. So, all right. So other than just like those changes, we just need to make sure we made all the changes that we wanted to that last section. Basically changing the word from patient to client and pronouns, right?
Yeah, that's all I wound up changing.
Yeah, okay, just making sure. So not really content change, but okay. Y'all okay with those changes? Any questions before we make a motion?
And there's no public comment at this time.
Okay, great, thank you. So this would be basically the motion to make the changes to subchapter C, because it's multiple sections.
Hey, I was trying to get unmuted.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
So, where it talks about the code of ethics.
Okay.
I mean, it's just minutia here, but I was wondering if we need to. The code of ethics is a document, and I don't know if it's being referred to as a document here. I mean, it talks about adopted and published by, so it might need to be capitalized. I mean, it's
Okay.
I think you're right. The code of ethics, the word code of ethics.
right.
I agree. I do agree that that needs to be capitalized, and it is an official document. Good catch.
Okay. So should we put the word like official in front of it, or? Well, it says it's published by AOTA, so I think
Yeah,
that's
I think it's good.
Right, because there's no unofficial one, so you're good.
right. Yeah, okay.
Do we have, talks about the certificate up right above that one?
Uh-huh.
Is that even a thing?
The certificate issued by authority. So that's a good question, because we have a license and then we have a permit. Dr. Van?
Yeah, before we get to that, can I make a comment?
Of course.
Every time the code of ethics changes, you all are changing, even if you don't like it, by the way you write these rules. Do you want to say the code of ethics as adopted on such and such a date? Because if they change the code of ethics to something that either is illegal in Louisiana or this advisory committee doesn't like, it would be monumental to change. I mean, it's a pain in the neck to change the rules. Let's be honest, okay?
All right.
So if you want to edit it to date. So I'm sorry, that's what I want. And then the other question was, where would we talk about license? Right here in site item 16?
Yes, right above it.
Okay.
I think in item 16, I think the reason that the word permit or certificate is because not every state
does it like we do. Yeah, that's right.
OTs a license. Some states might use the term certificate.
And of course, we're going to, and what you probably ought to do is, as you're changing the language, add the term or compact permission.
Ah. I think it's 3 places in there, right? like right above it. No. In number 16, it's like 3 different things. The very thing says license, permit, or certificate, and then it's under it too.
I think all states require a license now, but are you saying that they could still call it a certificate?
Well, for example, some states may require a license. Some states may say, well, we're going to call it a certificate. I mean, look, we just passed a law in Louisiana that said a permission is a license. Go figure. So, I mean, let's get the language so we have what everybody's using.
And then Ingrid, I think it's also the very last one of this. No, of 16. The very last statement.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. That's why I just remember when I was reading it, I was like, it just keeps going on and on. That's a great addition, Dr. Van. Thank you.
And as far as the code of ethics, Dr. Van, I know I would prefer to leave it not dated because the AOCA does update the code of ethics every 5 years. And I would want OTs to be complying with the latest edition of the code of ethics at all times.
But you never know when it may change to something that we can't do in Louisiana anyway. And I just don't want to get us in that trick bag, but because we have no control over what they do. We have control over what we do in Louisiana. And I'm not saying it's ever going to happen, but it has the potentials, but it's your choice.
Should we add something in there regarding Louisiana law? I don't know what that would be. A Patricia question.
I think the overarching thing about the rules is that they always bend to the law. So if we impose this ethics requirement on somebody and we say you have to use the national ethics standard, and I can't imagine that that's not, that's a baseline. So there's not going to be anything in that ethics standard that says, oh, and because of this, you don't have to follow Louisiana law. And we don't have a Louisiana ethics for OTAs. We have ethics for public servants and so forth. So I understand Dr. Van's point completely, but I think we're probably okay just leaving it generic like it is, which implies the one currently in place, or frankly in place at the time of the events that happened that we're worried about.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
And we can put that on Susie's list too, to remind them that whatever the rules say, if it conflicts with the law prevails.
Okay. All right, is that all the changes that we see for this subchapter? Anyone else have any thoughts or questions or edits? No. All right, well then, would somebody be okay making a motion to accept the changes of subchapter 7?
This is Raylene. I'll make a motion.
Thank you. Thank you.
This is Carolyn. I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Carolyn. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? Dr. Van, any public comment?
Neither before or after your vote.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, so that's the end of the rules. All right. So
All right. I have to run before you guys start something else new. So thank you. I
thank
appreciate
you.
everything.
We'll mark it down. Thanks. So 12:35. Okay. So
Right.
all we have left, and just real quickly, because I know we have some new business, is the use of title doctor. So I'm wondering if Ingrid and I maybe could look into that, Ingrid, to see if there's other states or what we can do.
There's a statute specifically applicable to this in Louisiana. You probably have to look at.
Oh, yeah? What, do you happen to know that number, Dr. Van?
Not off the top of my head. I'm sorry. I'm not a lawyer. I will look it up for you and get it. But it
Yeah, if you could
basically
send that
says,
to us.
basically what it says is if you use the title doctor, you have to, it is it's assumed in the public parlance that doctor means MD. But if you're a doctor of nursing, a doctor of psychiatry, a doctor of psychology, rather, you can use the word doctor, but you have to say, I'm a doctor of occupational therapy. I'm a doctor of advanced practice nursing. I'm a doctor of nursing. I'm a doctor of, it's not, I want to be very candid. It's not very well enforced, but it is what the law says. And I want you to know that, and I'll get the law for you.
Great.
Okay. So that would be like adding a section, and then the F part would be definitions. So, and just sort of like the plan for this with Ingrid and I were that we would just kind of comb through the document and like highlight any word that we felt like needed definitions, come up with some definitions, look at the definition section, and then kind of go from there. So that's the two lingering things. Right now on the books, we only have 2 more meetings for the year. The goal was to have these revised and all like approved by the end of the year so that we could submit them for Dr. Van and all the parties that have to comb through all this. So do y'all feel like we need another meeting before? We can wait till October to think about it. December just gets really hairy with, you know, craziness, but that's something to think about. So we have 2 items on the new business. One is by Dr. Van, and then the other one is the reappointment for OTAC. So Dr. Van, do you want to go first with your the ACOT information?
No, I sent it to you so you would know about it. It just,
Okay.
you know, I wanted everybody to know. I didn't know if you all knew, if it was a community knowledge. So I just sent it to you all for information purposes.
Okay.
Because it was sent to us as a
Gotcha.
board. And maybe you might want to explain to Ms. Phyllis and myself, in terms of licensing, what are the implications? It's my understanding that right now the rules require an ACOT certified graduation. But I also understand that anybody that's presently enrolled in a curriculum will graduate with an ACOT approved education. Is that correct?
Yes. Somebody in academics want to maybe give more details? That's how I understood it as well.
Carolyn, do you know if anyone actually could wind up graduating from an institution that's not ACOT accredited? I think it's possible.
I think it is possible. I know they're like Brown Mackey. I know we've had some issues with using courses from them.
I think he's talking about what their letter refers to, like the students are currently in that program, even though it's been, it's granted inactive, but the students who are currently in will graduate with the requirements needed, correct?
that's what I understand the letter to say, but I want to make sure as the advisory committee, you concur. I'm trying to pull the letter up. And it's,
Pull a letter up for us.
I got the letter up. If somebody will let me share a screen, I'll go ahead and share it. You want to stop, Ingrid, for a minute?
I did stop my share. Yeah, I stopped it.
Okay. And I'll do my share right now, and then you can see it. This is the letter we received. And it basically said, the program admitted its last cohort in summer of 2021. This cohort, 23 students, all of them completed didactic coursework, field work. And so it's my understanding that these people will stay in, but again, I don't understand when it says the inactive status would be communicated to the students to ensure that this does not affect their ability to sit for the NBCOT. Prospective applicants for the OTD program would also be notified, does not affect their current accreditation status or process for the OTD program. So the way I am hoping you all will concur is that these 22, 23 people will come to us from a school that is not lost its accreditation, but we will continue to recognize that for licensing purposes until we change the rule to say that they don't have to have license, they don't have to have accreditation school, they just have to have NBCOT. And that's why I had kind of been talking about this after reading this and trying to understand it. So I think that the new rules will prevent any problem. There may be some kids that come to us before the new rules are implemented, and I want an interpretation from you all to be sure we're on the same page.
Yes, now I understand this better about what Shreveport's going through, that they had to put their master's program on inactive status because they're going to be doing away with it. And everyone will graduate with an entry-level doctorate. And so the students, the whole time that they were in school, their program was accredited. But it looks like they're going to have one student who's still going to be doing their field work during this transition, but I would agree that they are all good to go.
All right, that's all I really need to know. That's all Ms. Phyllis needs to know, and we will act upon this appropriately. And that's really why I was kind of pushing the other in the earlier in the meeting today, because that way we don't have to worry about this anymore.
And then the letter under that, y'all, if y'all need to see, it says that it's gonna be inactive effective August 4th, 2023. So like it looks to me, it looked like sort of the academic year, like does it go inactive so that then they can resign it when those students finish and then transfer to the doctorate program?
It's inactive because no one can be admitted to that master's program anymore.
Right. And then once they get the OTD program, I guess, accredited or instated, then they submit a letter of voluntary or accreditation withdrawn voluntary, right? So that's it just seemed like a procedural thing to me, but maybe I'm wrong. Like
it is procedural.
Okay.
Because they're not going to have that program anymore.
Okay.
But they have met the accreditation standards. Their program has been accredited. They're just trying to teach out that cohort to begin the next program.
Okay.
And
So
I've got all I need from you all, quite frankly. That's all I needed from Ms. Phyllis. We will make sure that nobody gets denied a license because of that. And then if I'm gonna share a different screen and answer your question about the, where did I find it? Where did I put it? Okay, here it is. The use of doctor. This is the statute and the law itself right off of the web page of the, can you all see it? Is it big enough for you to see? Okay, so it says, no healthcare provider providing direct patient care shall present himself orally in writing to the patient using the title doctor or the abbreviation DR as a prefix to his name without a suffix to denote either the type of professional license held by the healthcare provider or the degree to which he's entitled for reason of diploma or graduation. And I will tell you how far some people have gone to comply, to get around this law. We actually have one person who wants to change their name, their first name, to doctor. So understand that it's wild out here in the world, okay? But nonetheless, so again, it defines healthcare provider. So that's the statute, and it's RS 37:1743.1.
And it even names occupational therapist. Y'all see that,
Right.
like at the bottom.
Yep. Right there at the bottom of section D.
So Ingrid, what are your thoughts for that as to putting into our rules and regs? Like,
I still think we should, even though this is a statute. I think we just need to educate practitioners that they would have to introduce themselves as a doctor of occupational therapy, as opposed to, good morning, I'm Dr. Ingrid.
yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. So maybe we can reference this statute too as well, so. Okay, thank you for that, Dr. Van.
No problem.
I just had a really quick question. If this is in violation, who is it reported to? Is it reported to us? How does that get handled typically?
Well, okay. Basically, what would happen is the way, and you have to see what's in front of it and behind it. But I think Ms. Pat would tell us that if we get a complaint, it would be somebody who is complaining to us. That's somebody who's not a doctor is using that term and doesn't cross the threshold into being the unlicensed practice of medicine. And we would take the investigation and deal with it in a way that we should. And we do have people that sometimes use the term doctor inappropriately, and the disciplinary people get involved. But again, that's a legal issue, and Ms. Pat and the team that advises Dr. Cresswell and the investigators deal with that.
That's right. It happens a lot in advertisements as much as, or someone who has a particular resentment of somebody using a title inappropriately will make a complaint. But sometimes it's just people who sign or use advertisements or otherwise refer to themselves as doctor without the appropriate credentialing to designate what type of doctorate they have.
Okay, well, I won't share anything else.
No, it's good information. We'll refer to that so Ingrid and I will come up with language for the rules and regs regarding that, maybe referring to that for y'all to review between now and the next meeting.
And we have no public comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. Under the last thing under new business is the reappointments. So I had kind of inquired, but not sure, we probably need to mention it, that would it be okay for us to, since we have access to the information on the cloud share, to review these and then at the next meeting, like have it on the agenda for us to make recommendations? Like, I've never really been a part of this, Dr. Van, because mine was, I don't know, I kind of.
Okay, let me tell you what I do with these.
Okay.
Every different licensing class has a different way of doing it than the other, practically. But when the board is authorized to name the members of the advisory committee, the board has said in the past, as long ago as my first year here, that they want 3 names for every spot. Okay. We can't get 3 names. We just tell them we can't get 3 people to volunteer. But I always tell them that the advisory committee recommends we name so-and-so. And that way they know what you all think, and they have the opportunity to pick other people and over your thoughts. But again, I think that's the fairest way to do it. I have to do that. If I can get 3 names for each spot, I can. Sometimes I can't. I say, we only have 2 people who want this job, and the advisory committee recommends this one, and then we do it. But again, the board makes those names, and to date, in the almost 6 years I've been here, when I have said the recommendation of the advisory committee is this one, they have taken it. Whether they're going to continue to do it, who knows?
Okay, so we have 7 applications. Yeah, 7 applications, and we have 2 spots open. So, given that it's 12:50, what do y'all think is the fairest way to do this? Like, do we each review them and come up with our 3 names per spot? And then we'll see like if anyone has the same ones, like at the top, like prioritize them.
I couldn't open anything except the PDFs.
That's
I
what
don't
it
know.
is. It's a PDF, and it's, well, no, you couldn't get the cloud share.
I got the cloud share, but when I tried to open the Word documents, I could not open them.
So it's at the end of the cloud share.
Go to your agenda and scroll all the way down to the end
Yeah.
of the agenda.
Hang
They're
on.
all there.
It's like the agenda, and then it had that the ACODE letters, and then it had all of the resumes.
It starts on page 40 of 62, and from 40 to 62 of the agenda, they're all listed.
Yeah. And we have access to this cloud share for a few weeks, is that correct?
Tracy?
You have it until I pull it down, actually.
What was the question? I'm sorry.
That's all right. How
Yeah.
long will it be? So Olivia will pull it down. She will not pull this one down. You may see 2. Don't get confused next month, okay? And we'll keep it up till after the next meeting for you all.
Yeah.
Yes, if that's what you wish. I can leave it.
I don't know how. I guess I just didn't scroll down far enough, but I was trying to go to the trying to open the documents from the other link that was sent in there.
Oh yeah, the first link didn't work correct. So you have it now.
About the YouTube videos?
No, Tracy, never mind. It's over.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So is everyone okay with that we kind of review it on our own, and then when we come back to the next meeting, how do we do this, Dr. Van? Do we submit them in the meeting? Do we go to executive session? Do we submit them by
No.
email?
I think basically all you have to do is tell me, we recommend these 3 names for one person, one spot, and these 3 names for the other spot. And we prefer one in A or B and C, and then I'll make those recommendations to the board, and that's it. Now, let me say this to you. I don't have a problem if, as an individual, you contact these people and say, are you aware of the time commitment? Do you really want to do this? It's a lot of work, or it's this, you're going to Fridays with crazy Dr. Collada by Telemed. And I just want to make sure you're comfortable with that. I think the key is, I don't think it should be public until we talk about it at the meeting. I don't think you should discuss it with anybody other than the individuals. And I think you should not discuss it in and among yourselves, just so we don't have the criticism of a rolling quorum that gets us all in trouble.
Okay, fair
But
enough.
as an individual, if you want to contact them and say, gee, do you realize how much work you're going to have to do? And is it what you want to do? But again, that's the kind of stuff that I think when we come back to meet, you can say, I contacted some of these people and this person really didn't understand what kind of work it was going to take and involve. And they decided that they really didn't want to do it. And that way you've eliminated a name or 2 or whatever, maybe none. Maybe they all realize how hard they're going to have to work, and then it'll be a tough choice for y'all.
Well, a lot of them, and I don't know that all of them, because I didn't keep track of it. I did get, more than 20, probably I would say close to 30 or 40 emails about the position and commitment. But honestly, my response was that it varied. I said what we do currently, that we meet monthly, but I said it's basically dictated by the committee and the chairperson who takes over in January, because it kind of depends on what we have going on. So historically, we met quarterly and that was fine, but because we were doing the rules and we couldn't meet by Zoom and we were pushed back, then we were meeting monthly, and it's 10 to 1. If something comes up, they may meet more often, but if nothing's really going on, they may meet less often. I mean, is that kind of fair? Because that's the feedback that I gave the people who inquired to me.
Well, again, you all have done an enormous amount of work. You all have been probably more dedicated to changing the rules than just about any of our other licensed classes. And I mean this sincerely. we at the board appreciate the work you're doing. But again, I cannot predict what anybody else's
Right.
the chairman will want to do. And so I think you've been very honest with them, but I don't think they need to know that there's a lot of time and involved in devoting to this, you know, reading before the meeting itself, and all of those things. So, and remember, anybody who gets appointed now is going to be caught up in that 3-year review.
Right. Well, they have to survive this one too, because it won't be done by December. I mean, hopefully we'll have it submitted to y'all, but then they, you know, y'all have to take a couple of months, rightfully so, because it's going to take a while. So, and I'm sure y'all are going to have changes and edits and suggestions, but yeah, I mean, do y'all feel like we need to email, or I need to email everyone who submitted it to inquire about that, or?
I think a phone call is more than sufficient.
Okay. Because I mean, I really didn't have much other than the person who, you know.
Darby, I feel like in the ad, if I recall, you did state that we meet monthly. And I think you even put in 10 to 1, or
Yeah.
did you put the time? Yeah. I personally feel like you kind of were honest in the ad, and that, you know, that I think the 7 people who've applied are probably coming into it understanding what it's about.
Hey, can I ask a question?
Sure.
I saw that, I think that Emily Dennis had her resume in there in the folder, but I don't see it at the end of the agenda.
I do not see someone by that name.
Okay. Let me see. What am I looking at here?
First one is Christy, then we have Deidre, then we have Wendy, then we have Megan, and Kathleen, Mary. And Tina.
Samantha.
Okay, so in the resume folder, there's a CV for Dennis. I know I can't open that one.
I guess that would be a question for Olivia, maybe.
So
Olivia,
yeah, I'm here. When I was like adding hers to the agenda, it had issues. So I tried saving it a different way. So let me see if I can just add it and you guys can all see it now. If I just put hers maybe separately by itself, because there was something with how it was saved.
Why don't you pull it up on your screen and share the screen with everybody?
Okay, I will do that.
we actually got a few OTAs, so I was excited about that.
Oh, yeah, no, let me just pull it.
And then just remember that per our rules and regs, even though we have it amended, area of practice and area of location represented is a factor.
Right.
And the 2 people that are going off are me and Brenda. So
We will miss you both.
I'll miss it. I'm like, I really want to stay on until these rules and regs get done, but I can't.
I'm with you, Darby. I think I'll be the person who finally makes public comments. I'll just, you know.
Yeah, exactly. Like, whoever's chair, please include me on the meeting dates.
Well, what we can do is invite you both to the public sessions. That's not a problem.
Yeah.
Can y'all see the screen?
I trust y'all because
Now
everyone says like, how do you feel about the people that are going to be in charge? Who's going to be in charge? I'm like, anyone can do it on this committee. Like, I am confident that anyone can do it on this committee.
Olivia, we can see Emily's now, but if there's any way you could I guess, gain us access for us to be able to review that along with the other 8 applicants. I guess maybe create a separate cloud share with just that document or something. That'd be great.
Okay, can you
In
Can you
other
see
words,
the other resumes that are in there?
we have a resume now, but none of us are in a position right now to make a decision. We're gonna want to like compare this person to all the others. We are able to see all the other applicants' resumes except hers on the cloud share that you sent earlier.
Okay, I'll try to see if I can resave it. It might have to be like a
There is-
PDF or something, but I'll save it.
There is
Yeah.
a folder on there, Olivia, that has the Word documents of all these resumes, but we can't open those. So we can only see the ones attached to the agenda.
Exactly.
Yeah,
You're-
that's what I was saying.
Right. The Word docs inside the resume folder are not opening.
Okay, I'll try to resave them all for you guys so you can see.
I can
them.
open the PDFs, but that's all.
Okay,
That'd be great, Olivia. Thank you so much.
you're welcome.
Poor Olivia, she's subjected to all of my last minute agendas and additions, and I forgot this, or oh, I gave you the wrong version. Like, I can't tell you how many times Ingrid and I have done that to her. Like,
Yeah.
not the most recent one, sorry.
It's fine. It's what I'm here for.
Okay, great. Okay. So our next meeting is October 13th. And Dr. Van, can you just check to see if we have any public comment?
No public comments at this time.
Okay, thank you. So before we adjourn, does anyone have any thoughts, questions, anything before the next meeting? We have Ingrid and I going to work on the doctor thing. And Patricia is going to assist us with the amount and penalty information, as well as maybe helping us simplify that section about the suspension of license. And then we have the definition section. So if I can in the next month, maybe I can try to start tackling that. So any other questions, comments? No?
I just want to verify. So we wait until the next meeting to give our names? Correct?
Yes, Dr. Van advised us not to.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. Okay.
Yeah, just because we're really not supposed to meet other than during the public meeting. So have your 3 available. So we need 3 names for each spot. We have 2 spots open. So that would be 6 names to be submitted in the order that you know. And if you need me to resend the thing about like what areas are already represented, I can do that. If people need that, I know I'd sent that out right when we were asking about applications.
I know you sent it. I would appreciate having it closer at my fingertips. Last night when I was reading through the resumes, I was wishing I had that in the forefront of memory.
I'll resend that. Yeah, I remember sending it and asking people to edit it. And then I think some people did, some didn't, and I kind of wasn't sure. So if there's something blank, it's because I didn't hear back, or if there's something wrong, then feel free to reach out to everybody and let them know. But so we're supposed to be looking at the location and also the area of practice. And we would also like to have an OTA on the committee if we feel like it's appropriate. So if the person we feel like is appropriate, like we don't want to force it, but we definitely would like to have representation. That's it.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
I know I will not be able to be here on October 13th.
Okay.
Do I submit names via email or just?
Dr. Van, what would be the best way for her to submit her?
Send them to me or Olivia, and we'll have it available when you go into to discuss it.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks. That's a great question, Carolyn, in case somebody can't make it at the last minute.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, everybody have an amazing weekend. We will officially adjourn at 1:04. Thank you so much, everyone.
And thanks for all your continued hard work. We really appreciate it.
Bye.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.